So I am about to reintroduce something into the Greg Tech New Horizons community. Something we haven't seen for years. You better buckle up. You are in for quite the ride. It is so fucking awesome. Now, get ready to be shocked. So let me tell you a little bit more about the context. Recently, I was talking to an anonymous Chinese player. The Chinese player base is very split off from us and happen to play very, very differently. We were discussing our differences. Then power gen came into play. We discussed mid-game power options and the obvious super unbalanced IC2 nukes were talked about. Naphtha, benzene, and even CBD and rocket fuel as well. And then he mentioned lightning rods, which I haven't heard of for years and thought they had just been nerfed into oblivion, just from information from other players since I wasn't playing back then. Looking into any high, I was shocked because they look so damn expensive. But I looked again at the earlier tiers and I realized that they produce 512 amps of HV each. What? I was so confused. How does this even work? What is this all about? Why is this China's most popular power gen and it's just not heard of here? The higher tiers of lightning rods were definitely not worth it, but the lower ones, only costing 4 Lapatronic clusters, did not look too bad at all if the 512 amps was true. That is a whole 2 whopping ZPM amps worth in IV. So I investigated further in how they set it up, translating wiki pages, and with much help from my newfound Chinese friends, I worked it out. And I am about to reveal it all to you. Let's dive straight into it. So how do lightning rods actually work? Have you seen that useless iron fence recipe? Yes, it's that one. What if I told you lightning rods use that to work? During a thunderstorm, the rod checks for an iron fence. Yes, an iron fence that only costs 0.5 iron to make. And it checks for a column directly above it. If it meets a certain Y level of 128 plus, the rod forces a lightning strike event every 256 ticks when it's thundering. In real world terms, that is every 12.8 seconds, and stuffs the energy into its internal buffer. Its internal buffer is 50 million EU. 50 million! And it can generate up to that every 12.8 seconds. The higher the rod is in the world, the more optimal these setups are. I won't bother you with the math, just know that when you place these higher up, the more power you will get. To output energy, it doesn't just dump the buffer in one go. Each tick sends a power packet at its nominal voltage, which is HV tier for the lowest tier with a current of 512 amps. This makes it kind of rough to extract. After each packet, the buffer is reduced by 1%. This repeats until the buffer empties. This is where you lose a fair amount of the full output potential. That's why the tooltip looks wild. 512 amps HV equals 2 amps ZPM in burst terms, but the average over time is actually lower due to its loss, and not being able to output the full amount instantaneously. And for a full optimal solution where you can extract all 512 amps, each lightning rod can produce a maximum of 109,000 EU per tick after this mechanic is applied, which is around 0.81 ZPM amps. And not the full 2. In plain rain, you only get a 10% chance to trigger a strike every 256 ticks. It's something, but storms are where the money is at, and we need to figure out a way to have consistent weather. Every successful generation breaks one fence above the rod. If you don't auto-replenish fences, your rods will die out quickly. This is the nerf that occurred years back and stops the majority of players using it. I'm not going to give a full block-to-block tutorial of this power gen setup. I'm not a fan of schematics. Have some fun, get creative with it. I will list all the tools you can do to achieve the same output. There are many different layouts you can use, some using magic, some using tech, and I will just cover how I designed my setup. It is pretty simple. This way, you can design it however you want with whatever tools you want to try to get. Because I know there are some magic haters watching this video. So here, we are posed with a couple challenges we need to solve. The first challenge here is the output. Lucky, the lightning rod outputs all sides, so we have space to work with. We need to find a way to output all 512 amps of HV power. I honestly had no idea how to do this when I first saw it. My first thought was using 64 amp EV to 16 amp IV transformers. There are 5 sides, however, sticking a 64 amp transformer on each side will only yield us with 320. And yes, higher tier transformers work for lower tier power, but I won't get into too much detail about that. Just know that they do. But then I was informed by my Chinese friend about the energy distributor. What the heck is this? This thing can transfer 320 amps of power. I've got Stargate multiple times and this is the first time I'm seeing this. This was definitely the perfect application for this. What a match made in heaven. I even consulted the great Hamcorp, who stated that the voltage distributor is useless. Well, now look at him. Everyone clowned the CEO in the comments. We are going to start beef soon. Just kidding, I love that fool. With just 2 of these, we can extract the full optimum output. Okay, next issue, consistent storms. So in Greg Tech New Horizons, there was only one method I knew to generate storms consistently, and that was using rituals with witchery, and uses extremely cheap materials like a wooden axe. However, I know many people hate magic and would rather do tech solutions, so I proposed another method which you can upkeep very easily, and that is using the Ender.io weather obelisk and cloud seeds. I bet you didn't know this was in the game. The setup is very simple, although from what I can see, it is basically a requirement to be activated automatically with OC. I was never able to get redstone for it to work. But basically, you produce concentrated cloud seed using the vats, which basically cost ice and clay. Passive some rockets into the weather obelisk, and then fire it when it is not a thunderstorm. All of these inputs can be supplied via EECs. OC can do this really easily with like a 10-line script. Basically, it just checks the weather every 30 seconds, and if the weather is not stormy, it fires the firework. I can link the Chinese Wiki page, or you can join my Discord to find the code. The third issue is replenishing the iron rods, so this power gen will be using a lot of iron. At IV, iron should be a non-issue. There are many ways to source it infinitely. Redstone centrifuging, EECs, lapis, there are tons of ways, but you will need a decent amount of that, depending on how much you scale this. To fill an area full of iron rods, you can use pistons in block places or formation planes, or you can simply use the block filler from Buildcraft, which is also very powerful. I will be using formation planes because I prefer pure AE solutions. Okay, onto the fourth issue, the actual power transfer. So we need to somehow route power back to our base, with a power generation that is 250 blocks in the sky. The method that I think is best is by using EU P2Ps and cables. When the energy distributors eject power, the maximum they can do per lightning rod is around 109,000 EU per tick, or 13-ish IV amps. So you will need to lead cables that can handle the amperage in a line and direct straight into EU P2Ps. These EU P2Ps can then be sent back to your base into a localized LSC. This will allow you to do it in another dimension if you don't want it permanently storming in yours. Crazy, isn't it? Yeah. If you are on a server with other players, this power gen may not be the method for you. unless you just want to inflict infinite stormy weather on them. Now we should have a fully working machine. We have used the fundamentals to solve all of the problems that it has. I designed it so that it is fully modular and I can keep expanding the modules as we need. And now all I need to do is activate the OC script and we will start to see the lightning come out. Every time the lightning strikes, you can see the rods breaking. The formation planes then replenish the rods and the pistons are on a timer pushing them forward. Every energy distributor is covered up in glass. Be careful with this since it always is in the rain. Two sets of distributors are connected to one large cable, which then goes into a power P2P, which directs it back at base into an LSC. This could potentially be made more performant by adding further transformers. We can see the power output here from one module. My setup only consists of 3 high fences, as I found it achieves very close to the maximum output. Insanity, absolute insanity. Who would build such a contraption? Apparently this method is used between tiers IV and ZPM, so if you spam enough, it can last until narc fuel, or silica rock fuel as the Chinese Wiki suggests. I hope I just blew your guys' minds, because mine certainly was last night. Please subscribe for more GTNH content, it would really be appreciated. Leave a comment for the next guide or video I should do first. Thanks and peace.